So this is the result of my 3-day sardine fast. Hey, what's shaking bacon? My name is Bruno Panucci. I hope you're doing well. So I did a 3-day sardine fast following a 2-month high-fat version of carnivore. And it wasn't just like an 80-20 high-fat version like lots of people usually settle on, usually between a 75 or 80% high fat. This was a 90% of my calories coming from fat and 10% of my calories coming from protein. I'm not one to normally weigh such things, and I didn't weigh anything all the way through this, which is probably part of the reason why in the first month I put on at least 40 pounds. The reason why I say at least 40 pounds was I started at 314, and I had put on 10 pounds a month before that from having dairy in my diet, and it wasn't coming off, so I was at 304, went up to 314, started this high-fat version of carnivore, and when I weighed myself on one of those medical scales, I was over 350 pounds. And when I weighed myself on that scale and put the weights to 350, it didn't even budge. It didn't start tipping or anything. So I know I wasn't just a couple pounds over 350. I was probably closer to 355 to 360, I would think most likely. So anyway, I did this high-fat version of carnivore, put on a lot of weight in the first month. The weight didn't bother me too much. It was a little discouraging, but on a scale of 1 to 10, it was like a 1.5. If anything, I was more curious about it. What bothered me about it was I had higher blood pressure, and also my heart rate went up to 100 beats per minute roughly. And that did not sit well with me. Even going for walks, I was a little more winded than usual. And I thought, oh man, is this something to do with my heart? Then I found out I was over 40 pounds heavier in just 1 month. This is where the fat fast comes into play in relation to the sardine fast. The last week I was doing this high-fat version of carnivore, I started losing weight. I knew I was eventually going to lose weight doing this, but I couldn't believe the amount of weight I lost in such a short amount of time. And if anything, the sardine fast halted that. Now, I can't prove it, but most likely that's what happened because it didn't just come down and slowly stop, it completely stopped. On the Sunday morning, I had dropped weight, and I had dropped weight every day up until my last day of the sardine fast. So as far as weight loss goes, it didn't do anything for me. Did it affect the weight loss I was dealing with at the time? It could have. Maybe it didn't. But there are some benefits to this. I'm going to go on with the blood work results and the ketone results a little bit later on. The reason why I decided to do the sardine fast the week before I started was I didn't like where my numbers are going with my heart rate and my blood pressure. Those are not good. It's one thing if I put on the weight and I was expecting to lose it. I was hoping this might break the weight gain or weight stall I was having even on a high-fat carnivore diet. Now, to be honest with the high-fat carnivore diet, in the second month, I cut back my fat just a little bit because I was making sure I was getting at least 90% of my calories coming from fat. So I had extra fat every day. In my opinion, when you have insulin resistance that's pretty bad, it can have an effect on your weight. Now, lots of people are out there saying, well, of course, if you eat fat, you're going to put on weight. No, actually, it has a very minor insulin response. And most people lose weight when they go high fat. Look at a ketogenic diet. Most people, when they start a ketogenic diet, they lose a lot of weight and they lose it fast. Now, if you have a compromised metabolism and you're getting too many calories in a day, you're eating too much food and you're getting too much fuel, it's going to have a negative effect. Once you're metabolically sound, I don't think that plays nearly as much of a role in your weight gain or weight loss. And a lot of things can sort of bounce off of you and you can handle higher protein, higher fat, lower calories in a day, higher calories in a day. And your body's going to kind of take it all in and be pretty stable, kind of more like you were when you were a teenager in your early 20s. But try that in your 50s or 60s and you might have a little bit more of a trouble with that. Now, Dr. Boz says that you can have difficulty losing weight in those situations if you have a history of yo-yo dieting. I had that. If you have a history of long-term obesity, I had that. And if you're 50s and you're in menopause, that can play a role. So that one isn't an issue for me. I had it checked by the doctor and he said everything was okay. It's not a worry. But who trusts doctors anyway? For all I know, you never know. So that was leading up to the sardine fast. I found out when I started the sardine fast, I really enjoyed the sardines. Now I got a variety of sardines at first because I wanted to see how I like them because I haven't had sardines in years, probably since I was a kid. And I got them with the skin and bone on and in, and I got them in oil and also in water. Now I'm fine getting it in water and I just drink the water and then I'd pour some cod liver oil on top of it. Now that's kind of expensive, but fortunately it doesn't take a lot of cod liver oil to fill up that can. We're talking like a tablespoon or two, right? So it's important to get in the day. So I was trying to keep high fat with this, but I think I struggled to get up to 90-10 high fat. So when I was doing this, Fortunately, I enjoy the sardines. I noticed in the beginning, I just couldn't get enough of them. I thought they were great. By the end of the third day, I wouldn't say I was getting sick of them, but it was beginning to feel more like fuel. You know, I ate them, I still enjoyed it, but it was more of an I wouldn't say obligation, but it was something I knew I had to do. So it was tough to get enough sardines in a day for me because I was having about 7 cans in a day, and that's not a lot of fuel for a guy my size. I was getting extra oil on top of that, but some people, the reason why they don't want to have oil in their cans of sardines is they use olive oil. Now, if you're strict carnivore, that's something that might be an issue for you. So when you don't want to have any seed oils at all or anything that's not meat-based, having that in your diet can cause an issue. So I did try one. I wanted to see what it was like for the experiment. So I typically have the rule of not a lick, taste, or bite off a carnivore diet, but I was doing this experiment and I wanted to see how it tasted. And it was fine. You know, it tasted just like oil. It didn't taste like olive oil, didn't taste like anything. It tasted like a fish oil, really, because it was packed away in this can of fish. So sticking with sardines in water was a better option. I actually ran out of cans by the second day and I couldn't find a reputable place. So I went back to the store I originally got my sardines from, and it was a 45-minute drive. I happened to have to come back in rush hour. That part sucked. So I ended up doing this for 3 solid days. So all that being said, these sardines were something like $7, just under $7 a can. So getting sardines at around $7 a can, and when you can have at least 7 in a day just to make you feel satiated, that's not even trying to get full, that can kind of get expensive, right? So I wasn't a fan of the price of it. But the average person out there, especially if you're a lady, I bet you can get by on just a few cans a day, maybe a couple cans a day. It's going to vary depending on your activity, of course. But if you have a big appetite like I do, and I could have multiple meals of this all throughout the day, then yeah, I would have 2 at a time if I was going into a workout or a long bout of exercise or activity. But for the most part, I just had 1 at a time. So the price point, I wasn't a fan of. It was pretty expensive. You're paying a lot of money for ounces of food, but the flavor, out of this world. So let's get into the results of this. I wrote it down, so you'll have to excuse me as I read off of this. So on Sunday morning when I weighed myself, the day before the sardine fast, I was down to 338. So that was a drop from well over 350 pounds. So on Monday, I measured my ketones and my blood work. My blood sugar was 93. My ketones were 1.8. That's honestly the highest I'd ever had my ketones. I tried the sardines the night before. I don't know if that had a play in that. That could have been just from my fat fast the day before and what I was accomplishing on my own doing this high fat version of carnivore for the 2 months prior. As well, my weight was down to 332 pounds. It was like 332.7 or 8 or something like that. On Tuesday morning, I weighed myself and I was 327.8. So I was down a few more pounds. Not too bad. I didn't measure my blood sugar or my ketones when I woke up because I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I've been under a lot of stress lately and I was trying to go back to sleep. So I lied in bed for like another hour and a half to 2 hours trying to fall back asleep and it just didn't happen. So when I got up, I was like, well, it's already been like almost a couple hours since I was awake. So I don't even know if it's going to be accurate. So I didn't do it, but I decided to not let that happen again. Even if I woke up early on Wednesday, I would make sure to check my blood sugar and ketones. On Wednesday morning, my blood sugar was 90. My ketones were 3.1. That was pretty crazy. I couldn't believe my ketones were that high. I thought that was really intriguing. I checked myself on the scale, the exact same weight, 327.8. I checked my blood sugar this morning as well and my ketones. Thursday morning, my blood sugar was 100 even when I woke up. And I woke up very early again today. I think it was around 5:30. And I was like, oh, come on. And I gave myself about 15, 20 minutes to fall back asleep. It wasn't happening. So I thought I might as well just check my blood sugar and ketones. And my ketones were 2.6. So I was up a little earlier than I should have been. That could have had an effect on my blood work and my ketone numbers. But what I noticed was my blood sugar is going up. And my blood sugar when I started this was lower from doing this high fat version of carnivore. The goal was to lower my morning blood sugar because I noticed back in February when I got my blood work done, my fasting insulin was high. It was way too high. That's what inspired this high fat version of carnivore and then following up with the sardine challenge. So I personally think that this sardine challenge broke my weight loss I was finally starting to get when I was doing this high fat version of carnivore. Now, I already decided I was going back to a high fat version of carnivore even when I was going to end the sardine fast. I might throw sardines in some of my meals the odd time, but for the most part, I'm just going to keep doing what I was doing the first couple months of this high fat version of carnivore. But more importantly, after all those numbers, because numbers to me, they don't mean anything. I shouldn't say they don't mean anything. They don't mean too much because it's only a sliver of the pie. Your weight is a section of the pie. Your ketones and blood sugar are a section of the pie. Your fasting insulin is a section of the pie. And you want to just try and make sure that you're taking all of it into account. So how did I feel afterwards? That's the really important thing we got to talk about. That's the most important thing. And I felt fine doing it. I felt just as good as when I was doing the high fat version of carnivore. Did my ketones show better numbers? Apparently. Does that really affect me in any way that I can really say? I don't know, but it's kind of neat that I had pretty high ketones for the first time in a long time. Those are the results of my 72-hour sardine fast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was thorough enough for you. I didn't need to go into any medical records or to get blood work done right before and right afterwards. Quite frankly, I don't think my doctor would have done that anyway. I think it's worth trying for most people. If you like sardines, I think you'll love it. If you don't think you can handle it with sardines, you might have to do it in olive oil that's got some lemon in there with it. It's up to you, however you want to do it. Try and be as strict carnivore as you can with it, but if you got to have it in olive oil, I understand. I really appreciate you watching this through right till the end. So if you can, hit the little subscribe button and bell notification, and I really appreciate that. Thanks and take care.